This video has been made possible by BENQ. If you're a digital artist in need of a professional grade monitor, then check out BENQ.com. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to the next video in our freelance series. Now, like I mentioned before, this is not an entertainment video. This is fairly serious stuff, right? But nevertheless, really important, and I hope it will help you on your journey to become a freelance artist, right? Okay, well, sit back and relax. This is going to take a while. Laws, rules, taxes, and paperwork. That's what we're going to be talking about. Keep in mind before we dive in that this may be different based on the country that you live in, right? But it will at least help you to understand what you need to take care of and where you potentially need to take care of it, right? Okay, so first of all, your legal entity needs to be set up. What's a legal entity? Well, you as a private individual can be identified, right? You got a social security number, you are registered in the computer for your medical insurance, for all sorts of stuff, your taxes and whatnot, right? When you decide to set up a company, basically the same thing happens, because a legal entity can be a person, but could also be a company, right? Now, you set that up so other people can identify your company. Let's say somebody somewhere down the road wants to do business with you, right? And they don't know you, and you say, hey, I own this and this company, and they want to verify that. They can go to the Chamber of Commerce, ask for your details, and they will see your name, the name of your company, whether you have employees or not, how much assets have been brought in, and all that kind of stuff, yeah? Okay. So what you do is you call the Chamber of Commerce or whoever takes care of business registration in your country, right? You set up an appointment and you say, listen, I want to register my company. You have a meeting, which is maybe an hour or so, and they ask you a whole bunch of questions. What are you going to do? Why are you doing that? How are you going to do that? And so forth and so on, right? When you describe your company, keep in mind that you try to keep it somewhat generic, because over time you might decide to kind of expand your activities, right? Okay, now, you walk out of that building with a piece of paper in your hand, and it has a registration number on it, okay? The name, employees, all that kind of cool stuff. Now, one more thing before we get into why you need to do this. There are a whole bunch of different business forms, not forms as in piece of paper, but forms as in shapes or, For example, you have companies called Inc. or LLC or all that kind of stuff, right? These different types are usually used for larger companies and is related to whether or not the owner is personally responsible for business debt, right? As companies become larger, sometimes they decide to change that from you're working freelance to, let's say at some point you got 100 employees, right? The amount of money going on in that company is so big that as a personal individual, you don't want to take that risk, right? So that's something they're going to ask you as well. But most people, especially if you're working freelance, it's just you, okay? So you got your piece of paper. Next thing you need to do is set up your taxes. As a private individual, you pay tax, right? Income tax, if you have income. Now, a company makes money as well, and you as the owner will take a certain amount of money out of that company because you have to pay the bills and live off that and so forth, right? You're no longer getting a paycheck from your employer because you don't have one, so you are taking money out of your own company. That means that the IRS or the Revenue Service, they need to know exactly how much money is coming in, how much is going out, right, and how much tax you need to pay. So with your Chamber of Commerce registration number, you call the Revenue Service or the IRS and you tell them, listen, I need a tax registration number, right? For two things. One is to pay income tax at some point. The second one is because you're going to be charging sales tax, and I'll get into that in a minute, right? And there's a possibility that there are even other taxes you need to pay based on where you live. Maybe regional taxes or memberships fees or stuff like that, okay? But the income tax and the sales revenue, sales tax, these two are very important, right? Okay, now once you do that, you need to set up an administration, because they're not going to take your word for it, right? You tell them, yeah, I sold $100 last month. Well, maybe it was $1 million. They want to know exactly, right? So you need to keep a paper trail. You need to register everything. What you have sold, what you have bought, your expenses, what you spent it on, why you spent it on that, and so forth and so on, okay? Now, so you got your Chamber of Commerce registration number. You're now a company. You got a tax ID number. You are now officially, set up to get started, and you can now start to do business. You can sell things, you can buy things, and so forth. And one of the things you do is, when you sell something, is you charge sales tax. Now, there are exceptions. I'm not going to go into that. Sometimes you don't, and sometimes the rate is different, but I don't want to make it too complicated, right? So we're going to keep it fairly generic. Now, what is sales tax? How does that work? Okay, I'll give you a simple example. Let's say you buy something, right, as a company, and it's $10. Okay, you need it because you're going to sell it to somebody. So you buy something for $10, and the taxes on that is $2. So you pay $12, right? You decide to sell it for $20, and the tax on that is doubled, so it's $4. So when you bought something, you paid $2, but then you sold it and you received $4. So you received $2 more than what you paid tax-wise, right? I'm not talking about the revenue. I'm talking purely about the tax. So you bought the product, paid $2. You sold it, got $4. The difference between these two, right, is the value added tax, the VAT. So what is the added value in this case? 10 on top of 10. You added value to that 10, and as a result, the tax went up as well, right? So the difference between these two, the value added tax, that is the amount you need to pay to the revenue service, right? This has nothing to do with income tax. This is sales tax, right? Now, you need to keep track of all of this. So everything you buy as a company needs to be in your administration. You need to keep tabs on it, right? Every receipt, every invoice, and you need to put them in your administration. Now, the way that's usually done is two ways. Anything that's cash related, right? You kind of have a cash book. You write down the date, you write down what went in cash, what went out in cash, date, and so forth. And because that's literally like a cash box, it can never go negative because you don't have negative cash, right? And then the other one you need to do is a bank account, if you have one, right? So you get receipts, what went in, what went out, keep track of all that. And then the third one, of course, is sales. If you sell stuff, keep track of your selling invoices. And then the next one is buying stuff, your procurement or purchasing invoices, right? So basically a cash book, a bank book, a procurement or buying book, and a sales book. Some people decide, okay, I'm going to hire somebody to do that stuff for me because it's way too complicated. Keep in mind that's expensive, right? You need to pay somebody on a monthly basis to do the paperwork for you. It's not that complicated. Okay, so that's your admin. Now, of course, you need to keep records on all of that. And the other records you need to keep is, of course, contracts. Now, we're going to do a whole video on contracts. But basically, a contract is a legal agreement between two or more entities. Why am I saying entities? Because, like I said before, you as an individual are an entity, but your company is an entity as well, right? So you can have a contract between two companies. So that's what a legal entity is. So if you have any contracts, you need to keep log of them as well. And keep in mind that if you offer somebody something and they accept it and you start working on it, that's a contract as well. But we'll get into that at some point, okay? All right, so based on where you live, you need to keep weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual records. Now, why do you need quarterly records? Well, at least where I live, every quarter you need to fill out basically the VAT status report. I don't know what it's called in your country. Basically, every 3 months, you tell the revenue service, This is what I sold, this is what I bought, this is the value that I added, and this is the value added tax. So they know exactly what you need to pay them. If you don't do that, you're going to be in big trouble because the tax service, they don't fool around, right? So make sure you take care of that. Okay, then on an annual basis, and again, this depends on where you live, it's more than likely that the revenue service is going to say, listen, I want an annual report. I want you to tell me what you own as far as the company, right? What is your, what are your assets? What do you own? Do you have vehicles? Do you have buildings? Do you have expensive computers and so forth, right? So what do you own? Do you have any debt? Based on all of this stuff, they're going to figure out, okay, what you need to pay as far as income tax is related, right? You get your business revenue, you get the business expense. After everything is said and done, there's a profit, and then a profit is used to either further your company or used for personal expenses. The amount that you use for your personal expense needs to be taxed as always. It's not a situation where you working for a boss have to pay, income tax, but now you start your own company, you don't. It doesn't work like that, right? So that's what you need to do as well. Okay. And like I said, it depends on the size of your company, whether you want to have help doing that. It can be a bookkeeper, but it can also be an accountant. It depends on the size of the company. There are many, many, many forums online that can help you with regional stuff when it comes to setting up your company. But this is basically the framework you need to get started. Okay, so just to recap here, set up your legal entity, set up your taxes, right? Set up your administration, keep records, keep contracts, and do weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual reports. And depending on where you live, you set up a paperwork for the revenue service so you know what you need to pay, right? Wow, whole lot of information. Hopefully it's helpful. Please let me know in the comments if you've got any questions. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.